estamos dando comienzo al webinar. Vamos a esperar a que empiecen a entrar todos los asistentes y en breve empezamos. Muy bien, pues vamos a dar comienzo al webinar. Buenas tardes y buenos días, dado que tenemos asistentes tanto desde Europa como desde distintos países de Latinoamérica. Gracias por acompañarnos y bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Vanessa Ramos, soy la coordinadora del consorcio que gestiona el Centro de Información Galileo Chile y desde el cual estamos organizando este webinar. Webinar que ya es el quinto que emitimos y que, como algunos de ustedes ya podrán saber, si participaron en los anteriores webinars, se enmarca dentro de un ciclo de seminarios online con los que pretendemos dar a conocer tanto el Centro de Información Galileo como el sistema de navegación por satélite Galileo en sí, su potencialidad y las oportunidades de negocio que ofrecen. Como les decía, este es el webinar número 5. Desde septiembre estamos organizando diferentes eventos. Este será el último que organicemos en este año. No obstante, seguiremos organizando nuevos webinars con nuevas temáticas para el año próximo. Así que les invito a que estén atentos a nuestras redes sociales, a nuestra web, porque en breve iremos emitiendo información sobre esos nuevos webinars para el próximo año. Aprovecho también para comentarles que todos los webinars que hemos organizado durante estos meses lo tienen disponibles en nuestra página web. Como decía, son webinars de diferentes temáticas, enfocados al centro, enfocados a Galileo desde una perspectiva más técnica, sobre casos de uso, agricultura, ganadería, etcétera. Y en esta ocasión, en el webinar que lanzamos en el día de hoy, vamos a vincular blockchain y espacio. Y para ello, pues tenemos un panel de excepción, componentes expertos en la materia que actualmente están trabajando en ambos campos y en cómo encontrar esas sinergias y aprovecharlas, ¿no? entre espacio y blockchain. Esta charla va a estar dirigida por nuestra compañera y especialista en blockchain, Loha Hashimy, a quien aprovecho para saludarla. Buenas tardes, Loha.
Buenas tardes, Vanessa, encantada. Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Muy bien, pues en unos minutos vuelvo contigo. Continúo un poco comentándoles cuál va a ser la dinámica del webinar. Aproximadamente durará como 1 hora. Luego habrá tras la charla con los expertos, tendremos un espacio para preguntas, que ya os explicará Loha cómo se llevará a cabo. Y bueno, simplemente comentarles que el webinar se está grabando, como les decía anteriormente, luego lo colgamos en nuestra página web y también les enviaremos el link a los asistentes para que puedan acceder al webinar. Antes de ceder la palabra a Loha y que demos inicio, ¿no? a esta charla con los diferentes expertos, por si alguno de ustedes es la primera vez que participa en estos webinars que estamos organizando o no conoce aún el Centro de Información Galileo, me gustaría hacer una pequeña introducción sobre quiénes somos y cuál es nuestra misión. Entonces, simplemente en unos minutos les comento sobre el centro y a continuación pasamos ya a la mesa. Este centro está impulsado y financiado por la Comisión Europea y en línea con los objetivos en materia de espacio de la Comisión Europea, la misión del centro se basa en 3 puntos básicamente. Por una parte, fomentar la adopción de Galileo y de EGNOS en los países latinoamericanos. Por otro lado, aprovechar el potencial de mercado que ofrece ese tipo de sistema, de la misma manera que ya se está aprovechando aquí en Europa. Y, en tercer lugar, favorecer líneas de cooperación y colaboración entre Latinoamérica y Europa. Es decir, generar proyectos basados en aplicaciones de Galileo y EGNOS entre ambas regiones, entre Latinoamérica y Europa. El Centro de Información Galileo Chile está obviamente situado en Chile, en Santiago de Chile. No obstante, damos cobertura a otros países, a Colombia, a Ecuador, a Bolivia y a Argentina. Es decir, desde el Centro de Información de Galileo, Chile, damos la misma cobertura a estos 5 países. Asimismo, el centro está gestionado por un consorcio que está formado por 4 organizaciones. Por un lado está la Fundación Knowledge Innovation Market, que es la organización a la cual pertenezco yo y Loha, y tenemos el rol de coordinadores del proyecto. Luego contamos con 2 universidades, la Universidad Politécnica de Madrid y la Universidad de Santiago de Chile. Y la 4ª organización es el Clúster Aeroespacial de Madrid, que aglutina pues, gran número de empresas relacionadas con el sector de aeroespacio. Desde el centro ofrecemos 5 líneas de servicio, servicio que va orientado a la industria de navegación por satélite, a los desarrolladores de aplicaciones y a los usuarios finales. Y además estos servicios son totalmente gratuitos para nuestros usuarios. Estas 5 líneas, como decía, van encaminadas a, por una parte, identificar mercados y stakeholders en aquellos países a los que damos cobertura, identificando cuáles son esos usuarios potenciales de Galileo y de EGNOS y que pueden llevar a cabo estos proyectos, promocionar estos sistemas a través de diferentes tipos de iniciativas como este ciclo de webinars que estamos organizando, facilitar el desarrollo de aplicaciones basadas en GNSS. Aquí bueno, pues servimos un poco de puente entre aquellos que tienen esa idea, que quieren generar ese nuevo negocio, que quieren optimizar sus operaciones mediante el uso de Galileo de EGNOS, y aquella otra parte que puede ofrecer ese servicio, ¿no? Que puedes ayudarles a poner en marcha ese nuevo proyecto, ya sea desde una parte técnica, con socios. Nuestro rol va a ser ese, el de facilitar el que se lleven a cabo esos proyectos y poner en contacto los diferentes actores. Por otro lado, si queremos que se generen estos proyectos basados en Galileo y en EGNOS, necesitamos personal cualificado que pueda llevarlos a cabo. Por lo tanto, otra de nuestras líneas de actuación es precisamente facilitar el que haya pues, esa educación y esa formación en ese tipo de temáticas, con lo cual nuestro rol también como colaboradores con la parte académica va a ser y está siendo bastante importante. Y finalmente, pues bueno, como decíamos, un poco englobando todo lo que comentaba, el facilitar esa colaboración. Al final lo que se pretende es que haya esas sinergias entre Latinoamérica y Europa con ese marco en torno a Galileo y a EGNOS. Por mi parte, nada más. Simplemente, bueno, pues les dejo aquí tiene la página web nuestra para que puedan bueno, pues visitarnos y si quieren más información sobre los servicios que ofrecemos, si quieren poner en contacto con nosotros a través de nuestra página web lo pueden hacer. Y sin más dilación, pues bueno, les voy a dejar con los verdaderos protagonistas de este webinar, que son pues, este panelazo que tenemos en el día de hoy y que Loha se encargará de dirigir y de presentar. Así que nada más. Muchas gracias, espero que lo disfruten y Loha, todo tuyo.
Muchas gracias, Vanessa. Ahora yo cambio a inglés, como que tenemos ponentes habla inglés. Para los que hablan solo castellano, lo siento mucho, pero esta vez a ver si podemos, ¿no? Como que los webinars anteriores eran en castellano, esta vez hemos intentado adoptarlo a nuestros ponentes y lo estamos haciendo en inglés. Así que yo cambio, os voy a dar la bienvenida otra vez. Así que good afternoon, and thank you all for finding time and attending in today's webinar. As mentioned by Vanessa, my name is Loha Hashimy, and I'm working as project manager and innovation consultant at Knowledge Innovation Market. Our company is a leading provider of technology transfer services in Spain, and Galileo Information Center is among many projects that we are executing. Before starting the session, I would like to ask if you can see and hear us well, and please let us know if there is any technical problem in the chat. And as mentioned by Vanessa, our topic today is blockchain for space, and the speakers are Emilio Gonzalez, Andres Munoz, Samson Williams, and Alberto Fernandez. Before we start, let me explain how you can talk to us during the webinar. So if you have any questions during the presentation, just write them to the Q&A below the window that you have open, in the language you feel more comfortable with, either Spanish or English. We will have a short Q&A session at the end of the panel to answer your questions. Today we have an amazing panel, as Vanessa already said, and the topic is the applications of blockchain for space, mainly Galileo. Where we will be talking about the space economy, digital transformation, and applications of blockchain for space. We will also talk about future trends and what you need to keep your eyes on that could directly impact the space sector. But before we dive into the panel discussion, let's take a few moments for each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their background in the industry. What about, let's start with Andres and Alberto. Would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the project that you're working on? Alberto? Alberto and Andres, both of them, they're working at the same project. That's why I'm calling both of them together, so we can have the presentation of both.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Yeah, here it is. So, I'm Alberto Fernandez. I'm a telecommunication engineer, hello, can you see me? Yeah, okay. Sorry, apologies for it. So I'm a telecommunication engineer, but I'm currently working as a software engineer. I was specialized in middleware, and then I discovered the blockchain technology, and I immediately saw an opportunity to use this technology to integrate applications. I work for a Swiss company. It's called Giluria, and this company was incorporated by the core developers of a blockchain that is called Next and Ardor, that it's 100% proof of stake. And also have been working in many other projects as an integration architect. I've been living in 3 or 5 countries, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity to explain what we have been working on. So I will pass to Andres so he can introduce himself.
Thanks, Alberto. Hi, everyone. I'm Andres Munoz. I'm a civil engineer by background, originally from Colombia. Right now, I'm working here in Spain, in Madrid. I'm working for ESRI. I've been working in the geospatial technology industry for about 15 years. My experience started in the United States working for Esri in Redlands, California, where I was supporting technical marketing. Then I moved to Florida and I worked for the local government. I worked for the city of Hollywood. And well, since 4 years ago, I moved to Spain and I joined Esri. Esri is the global market leader in geographic information systems. We refer more now to location intelligence. And it's been around since 1969. So we are a big global company and we are supporting different industries, starting for transportation, which is the industry that I support right now as a solution engineer here in Esri, Spain, and other industries such as utilities, public health, local governments. We support local governments and well, insurance companies and everything where geospatial technology applies. And well, I'm very happy to be here to talk about geo-blockchain. And I give you back, I'll send it back to you, Loha, now.
Thank you so much, Alberto and Andres. It's a pleasure to have you today with us in this webinar. Samson, can you give us a short presentation of yourself? Can you talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, beautiful people. My name is Samson Williams, and I'm interested in space and blockchain. I wrote a book called Blockchain and the Space Economy, and I really did that for my niece and nephew, Xander and Amelia. So they live in Mexico, they live in Playa del Carmen, and they don't actually speak English yet, but they're gonna learn. And so I talk about the space economy and what it means for the permanent human settlement of space, because we're not just sending rockets into space, we're sending people. And that's really gonna change life here on Earth. And so that's my perspective that I bring to it, not only for myself, but for the future generations. Xander's 3, Amelia is 6 years old. And so we're building for the future. And I'm trying to get everyone else involved through education. I teach at Columbia University in New York, as well as the University of New Hampshire School of Law. We teach these courses on blockchain and the space economy, because we're trying to get people's mind to wrap around like, humans are gonna go to space, and we wanna make it an inclusive, we wanna make space an inclusive space so that everyone has representation. Otherwise, we're gonna colonize space, and it's a little bit different if we have permanent human settlement of space versus the colonization of space. And then of course, there's all the business of space. So right now the space economy is worth about $400 billion, but by the end of 2030, it's gonna be around 2 to 3 trillion. So just trying to encourage everyone to just be aware and have the conversation that, hey, there's this thing called the space economy, and we want you to be part of it.
Amazing, thank you, Samson. Emil, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Hello, Loha. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. Well, my name is Emilio Gonzalez. I work for Telespacio Ibérica. I am working for SpaceOpal, who is the operator of the Galileo system. I'm now at the European GNSS Center, the GSC, which is a one-stop shop for all the services apart from the signal in space for Galileo. So there we have a help desk. We have we provide the notifications for failures, for changes in the constellation, the NAGUS. We provide products such as the almanacs for Galileo. And of course, this is everything backed on a website. But besides, we provide fundamental inputs to the signal in space. The high accuracy service or the authentication service for the open service, the OSNMA, are computed from the center. So I'm really happy to be working on this project. and very happy also to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Emilio. Really interesting. We are really honored to have you today with us. So let's, without any more delay, let's start the panel discussion. I am going to ask questions from panelists, though I invite all the speakers to ask questions from each other. The first question, so the first part probably will be more introductory. So the first question that I have is from Samson. You just mentioned the space economy. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the space economy?
Yeah, so the space economy in short, we like to keep answers very short. It's the upstream, which is rocket launch, the downstream, which is the data, and the in-stream activities of business in space. So most of the time we focus on rockets because, you know, they're big, they're sexy, everybody gets excited. That's just upstream. And so it's like, oh yeah, SpaceX, Ball Aeronautical, Boeing, et cetera, they're focused on the upstream, getting people to launch. And there's lots of industries that support building those spaceships. And then once they get into orbit, that's in-stream or in-orbit business. And so those are typically hardware providers and satellite providers because they provided nanostats or they built that equipment that's actually orbiting in space or in-stream. The real value of the space economy, though, at least in my opinion, happy to disagree, is what's the downstream, because we're going to space basically to collect data. And so data is the new gold, data is new oil. So I love astronauts. They have a very dangerous job, but they're basically the Uber drivers of space. They take you up to space. Once you get there, that's when you do your business. And so we focus on at the Space Channel and in the space economy, we focus on the downstream data or the downstream because that's where the revenue is at. And so when you take the activities that occur, that's where you get the space economy. Some folks build rockets, some folks build satellites, some folks are on the ground turning that data into revenue. And that's done in a variety of ways. I love what Andres and Esri does for data because they're basically they're on that downstream side of things, turning those visual images of the Earth into revenue for their business. So that in a nutshell is the space economy. Right now it's worth about $400 billion. As it gets developed out, we're looking at 2 to 3 trillion by the mid 2030s. And this is where everyone has an opportunity to be involved in this, the next version of a digital Silicon Valley, which is the space economy.
So let's see by the end of this webinar, if we convince some of the participants actually to take part in this big pizza and take a little bit chunk of it. But yeah, before we go more in depth to this topic, Emilio just introduce a little bit the projects that he is involved. Can you, Emilio, tell us what is the contribution of Galileo in digital transformation?
Yes, well, there are many technological paradigms that are going on now, which can be included in these nice words of digital transformation. For instance, we've got blockchain, of course, but also we can include augmented reality, the crowdsourcing, cloud computing, the Internet of Things, IoT, and all the telematics industry. So there are many trends today, and Galileo can contribute adding value to each of these industries. For geomatics specifically, there are some emerging applications for surveying that can be supported or leveraged by GNSS in general or Galileo in particular. For instance, the SLAM, simultaneous mapping, the mobile mapping, this has cameras, has a lot of sensors, but it is based on absolute geometric information, which is GNSS. And here Galileo can provide significant value because it provides a lot of accuracy. What about GIS? We've got our partners of Esri here, and they are making amazing things with location-based data. What GNSS provides is the first part, location. So Galileo, of course, plays a role there because it provides a lot of accuracy and also more availability for the solutions. What about the BIM? It's the partner of GIS in the buildings. Well, there the satellite information is not so crucial, but for infrastructure beams, for I don't know, for bridges or these kind of projects, you also need a GNSS receiver. For augmented reality, for instance, well, this is one of the sectors where we got the most important rise in the prospect of the business. And GNSS can provide a cost-efficient way to input the location in mass market devices. So as time goes by, you've got more and more inexpensive devices, and there you can easily integrate a GNSS chip, and you already have a very accurate position. That's where Galileo can play a role. What about the crowdsourcing or cloud computing? For crowdsourcing, we mean gathering data from a lot of people with their smartphones or with other devices. And these, as I said before, already have location enabled by GNSS. So it is a really very good enabler for this kind of technology. And for the cloud computing, all the computations for the accurate positions in geometric applications can be enabled in the cloud, not just in the device. This is very important for IoT, where you've got a very stringent energy requirements or computing requirements, but you can work with a chip, with GPS Galileo, and send your information back to the cloud where the computations are made. So altogether, we can think of Galileo provides a lot of information. There's this trend from the professional, you go to a commodity. So before, the geomatics industry was based in very expensive equipment, and now you can do those tasks with inexpensive devices, and all those devices are already chipsets with Galileo.
Thank you so much, Emilio. So you just mentioned how Galileo can be used in combination with other technologies. And before, Samson just mentioned that we are talking about a trillion market. We are talking about a lot of money. So Samson, can you tell us how businesses make money in space if it's not clear from Emilio's explanation? You just mentioned that about the connection with data and how the data can be converted to revenue. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
That's already happening right now because everybody already uses the space economy. If you've got one of these, well, we're on a Zoom video that is part of the space economy. This isn't possible without those satellites who make this communication possible. And of course, the world does business on these videos. And if you have one of these devices, a mobile phone, you're already part of the space economy. So I should have prefaced this by saying, if it was 1993 and I was going to tell you about the internet economy, I was like, hey, there's this thing, it's called the World Wide Web. It's also called the internet or the interwebs. And one day in 2020, the entire world is going to go on to the internet to do business because everybody's going to be on lockdown. And I would say you could buy goods, products, service, order McDonald's, order fast food, and you could do your business on the internet. So in 1993, I would have to explain to you what is the internet economy. And you might not have gotten it because it's like, I don't see it. I don't have a smartphone because they didn't exist yet. And so when we talk about the space economy, we're saying there's this ecosystem above our heads, roughly 100 kilometers. It already does about $400 billion worth of business annually. You just don't see it because you're like, oh, I don't get on a rocket. And this is where we have to differentiate the sexiness, the machismo, from the revenue. So rockets, they're very sexy, but they actually have very thin margins. And this is where SpaceX, they're not focused on their rockets. They're focused actually on Starlink bringing Wi-Fi to the globe. And so that's just one of those businesses where if you look at the margins between how much they make for rockets versus how much they're projected to make for their 5G Wi-Fi, the 5G Wi-Fi actually is the money-making revenue. So we have to really think about, let's not just focus on the sexiness of space, but let's focus on the revenue and the sustainability. And of course, if you're there first, like Elon Musk and Starlink, he has a head start on everyone else who's like, oh, we're trying to get in part of this fifth industrial revolution. And Emilio touched upon it. And the fifth industrial revolution are all of the buzzwords: blockchain, AI, machine learning, cloud, big data. But they're in space because space is a truly digital native space. There is no cash in space. You just don't take paper dollars into space because it's all digital. And so when we think, how are people going to make money in space or out of space? Part of it is the upstream, the in-stream, and the downstream. And you really just have to determine which part of this revenue chain do you want to be part of: the upstream revenue chain, the in-stream revenue chain, or the downstream revenue chain. And last but not least, when we solve for space, we solve for Earth. So we come up with solutions in space that we apply here on Earth. So when we talk about the space economy, I think that Esri, here in America, we have an agency called NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency. So they do weather. And when we talk about climate change, all of the data from climate change that tell us about the rising sea levels, the global warming, that all actually comes from space. But climate change is impacting wherever you live. It's impacting you more than anything else other than COVID at this very moment. And so when you say, how are we going to make money? We're going to continue to harvest the data from space to say, here's how we're going to actually change our business. We're going to have sustainable green economies, and that's going to help mold and shape how we live here on Earth. So we often think about the space economy, but when you solve for space, we bring it back down to this giant, beautiful blue marble that is Earth and how it impacts everyone. And we'll be able to make tons of money off of this, trillions of dollars of revenue off of this. And we're just at the very beginning of the start of this value chain.
Really interesting and insightful. Thank you so much, Samson. So both of you, I mean, both Emilio and you mentioned, you touched upon some technologies such as cloud computing, AI, blockchain. So today's topic is basically or mainly blockchain. Before talking about applications of blockchain for space, for the ones who are who don't know that much about the technology, I just wanted Alberto to give a short introduction to what is blockchain, and maybe he can clarify it a little bit to us through the explanation.
Yes, sure. So it's the missing part. We were talking about space, we were talking about the data. So what's the part of blockchain? So in a nutshell, I don't want to extend myself a lot in the explanation. A blockchain is a digital ledger that has three main characteristics. First, it is immutable, and it means that it's not possible to change. Okay, and just in like business, where transactions are based on trust, so also the members can operate on trust. The immutability is ensured by the prevention of a record of a transaction being modified or deleted. So when a member wants to make a transaction, it is date and time stamped, and it is accompanied by something that we call a hash, let's say a key, generated by the computer using the member's private key. So every subsequent transaction is similarly stamped, and a new hash is generated, which includes the earlier key. So what are we achieving with this? what we have is that it's really practically impossible to modify data that was written onto a blockchain. Also, other feature is that we can verify the transactions. So we can feel totally trust that the transaction was made who claims to be. So there is no any possibility of hacking or anything. The last feature that I want to mention about blockchain is that it's decentralized. So it means that each participant can keep a copy of the data of the blockchain, and we verify the transactions independent. Okay. What kind of blockchains do we have? Because if we think the most popular is Bitcoin, it's a public blockchain, open for the public, everybody can access, but we have some variations. We can have public and private blockchains. Private, it means that there are some entities that are collaborating each other to maintain a network. And if you want to participate in the network, you have to be invited. So you can be within the network. But we can have also hybrid networks, okay? And this is the case we have been working with Andres, where we are using a public network, but we have our own, let's call it private blockchain, where we can interact and we can either be with permissions or totally open to the public. So this is the main concepts about blockchain. So to think about what Samson and Emilio said, I totally agree with Samson about that. Now the new oil is the data, but do we have to trust the data? And it's possible with the data to create, for instance, a program of cash flows. And this is what the blockchain technology fits very well, okay? To have trust on the data that it's collected or produced by Galileo with the great accuracy that Emilio mentioned, one of the strongest points, and so on. So in a nutshell, blockchain, distributed ledger, decentralized database.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alberto. Yeah, usually when I want to explain what's blockchain, I go back to artificial intelligence, saying that, okay, with artificial intelligence, we want to mimic actually what a human being does. IoT is all the sensors, the things that we can sense. And artificial intelligence is the algorithm that actually makes that data to mimic human behavior. And the blockchain is, for me, the brain where you store all the data in a safe manner. So if we go and kind of do a simulation, say, okay, what is maybe the most similar thing, maybe the human beings, right? Got all the technologies, we were missing the part of securing data, the brain part. And blockchain hopefully will provide it to us. Something, exactly, to store data in a safe manner. So now we know that what is blockchain. Already Samson talked about other technologies and the space economy. Samson, can you maybe give us some applications of blockchain in the space?
Yes, I just shared a link for everyone in the group chat. You can look at it later, because when we talk about blockchain, I wrote an article. It's a blockchain es como un grupo de mensaje de texto. And so it's in Spanish. And so it talks about what is blockchain, that it's like a group text message, because we're all in this group text message. We're sharing data or information. It's time-stamped, because every time you hit enter, that information gets time-stamped. It's distributed, and it's encrypted in the sense that just because I deleted off of my phone, that it still exists on Alberto's and Loha's phone. And so this is where you're thinking, if you think of blockchain as a group text message, you're like, oh, it hits all those requirements, and your cell phone is the node. And so when you're thinking, do I need a group text message for my business? And so the answer to that is yes, particularly in space. And so the biggest application of blockchain is, when you think of blockchain, if you're not trying to overthrow the government or get rid of the banks, blockchain is a really good way of encrypting records of data. And so it encrypts it so well, you can show these records of data publicly. That's literally how the Bitcoin blockchain works. It's like, oh, it's really encrypted. It's encrypted so well, we can show it to the world. And so the question is, does your business, in order to generate money, need to show to your consumers or the marketplace records of data? And the answer to that is yes. You will see where satellites have micropayments between satellites for the transmission and sharing of data. And you want that done on a secure platform that's transparent, so everyone can see that, oh, Alberto actually does have money or tokens or cryptos to pay for Loha services in orbit. And so right now there's a company called Orbit Fab. They've already figured out how to have refueling stations in space, in orbit, because right now when you launch a rocket, it runs out of fuel and it's useless. It becomes space debris, it becomes space junk, it creates another hazard. So what Orbit Fab is developing, or has developed, is a refueling station so that you can refuel your rocket. That's going to be done on an autonomous level where the rocket and the device, they talk to each other, one, to sync for fueling, and two, to sync for payment. That payment won't be in cash as we traditionally think about it. It'll be on a token-based system. And this is where blockchain is enabling you to have a token that you redeem for fuel. And this is where it needs to be on that group text message that's public, that's displayed, etc. You'll see the same thing when we come to demarcating orbits, like who's in what orbit at what speed. You need that public ledger. Works very similar to real estate, to say who owns this orbit. That way we want to reduce, this is actually for insurance purposes, to reduce collisions. Last part is where blockchain will come in. We're all very familiar probably with cryptocurrencies, with Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. But in space, we don't actually care about Bitcoin. No one uses Bitcoin in space. What we really care about is data. Right now, roughly 95% of space data, because it generates terabytes per minute, is lost. We just can't maintain it. But when you have, in this group text message, when you replace the cell phones with satellites, and satellites are the nodes, that is the future of cloud computing. So your satellites can talk to each other, share data, and then data becomes currency. Because when you're in space, you actually need to know about solar flares, what other objects are in your path, more than you need to get paid, because those things will impact your operations and your business continuity and your business resiliency, and of course your profitability. So we're switching paradigms between give us what we think of fiat money or cash to data is the real value of space. And this is how blockchain will be able to trade, exchange, and sell data, not only in orbit, but also on the ground. And so that's some of the applications for blockchain in the space economy.
Now you basically give us a good explanation of why data is money.
Yes.
Really interesting. Thank you. And now I want to go back to Emilio's. Emilio before mentioned some applications of Galileo combinations of Galileo with different technologies. Any combination of Galileo with blockchain, Emilio?
Well, yes, we could think of some technologies that could benefit from Galileo and the blockchain world. For instance, tracing of agricultural farming products with IoT sensors. This way, you can have a ledger of where those products were produced and where they went. So this is very possible now with these technologies. Of course, the location part, it will come with GNSS, and the ledger part with blockchain. But Galileo does not only provide solution. The GNSS satellites are in fact a bunch of atomic clocks in orbit of the Earth, and they provide very accurate time. And the synchronization, the accuracy in the timing of the networks is essential. And it is essential for the financial transactions, in particular for those in blockchain. For instance, in the stock market, it's essential to have accuracy of the timestamps down to the microseconds. With Galileo, you could get 14 nanoseconds, and more timing devices are using Galileo to get this kind of accuracy. But not only accuracy, there is also robustness to features in Galileo. For instance, it's a different constellation from GPS. If something happens to one or another, you get a backup. But also Galileo, with its authentication feature, it provides a double layer of security, of redundancy for these kind of financial transactions.
So how does authentication works, Emilio? If you give us.
Well, yeah, first I would like to announce that we are proud to say that yesterday the first test signals of the OSNMA, the authentication service, came out from our center. So now they are undertaking the first tests. They will go on during all next year, and whole services will be operational for 2022. Now, how does this OSNMA work? It is quite related to the core of blockchain, the cryptography. So every satellite has a cryptography key. In fact, it has several satellites, and a MAC, a message authentication code. And those keys are generated. You can generate one key from others in a chain as blockchain. It is a Tesla chain. So the question is this: that function to get one key to another is applied backwards in time. This way, it is very hard to spoof to that someone can mimic a signal and put wrong location information. Because if you get a key, you can get the key that has been broadcast some seconds ago, but it's not possible to know the next if you don't have this function. So this is a way to put authentication. The receivers get these keys, apply this function, which is known with a public key, and get back to a valid key, and compare with this message authentication code. And it's okay, then they can be sure that the location is right. And what uses are there? For instance, the payments based on location. The Common Agriculture Policy, for instance, they are paying agricultures based on photographs, or then you need to show that your location, the location of those geotagged photos, is right, so you are not forfeiting. What else? The secure timing that I referred before. You provide a second layer of security for the synchronization. Or for instance, in drone deliveries, you can be sure that your delivery of, I don't know, a smartphone, a book with Amazon, gets to your home, and it is not spoofed. So anyone with an inexpensive spoofer could get that delivery and land it at his or her backyard. So with this technology, you can be sure that that doesn't happen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emilio. Now we will go to a real use case of blockchain, or combination of blockchain with geospatial data. I would like to now refer to remaining questions to Andres and Alberto. Can you, I mean, any of you, because both of you, you're working in geo blockchain. What is geo blockchain and how it is different from other blockchains? Maybe Andres, can you?
Yes, Loha, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes. Well, when we talk about geo blockchain, I want to make sure or emphasize that it is not a blockchain. Geo blockchain relies on blockchain technology. What it refers to is, well, we are talking about data and how we transfer data into a blockchain. With geo blockchain, data goes along with the geospatial component. It's adding X, Y to the data. So in this case, we are talking about the GNSS Galileo. So when data is collected and is uploaded to the blockchain, it goes along with the X, Y coordinates. And that makes it suitable for all the geospatial application. I mean, we can use it, for example, in transportation. So tracking transportation, let's talk about fleets, trucks. When trucks are now, most of them, especially in the transportation of goods, they have devices that are constantly collecting location data. So in this case, it's going to be GNSS, Galileo, or GPS. And in the track, they have other sensors. So sensors such as temperature, or if anything malfunctions in the track, it also gets reported. So these sensors are transmitting live information to a GIS. So when we receive, a GIS receives this data with location, it immediately reports that data into a blockchain. And the blockchain collects and stores all the data of this track from its start point to its end point. In the slide that we have, well, thanks, Alberto, you have the mouse, so you can point. Yes. From the GIS, it goes into a blockchain. I'm going to explain later a use case that we are working on with a transportation fleet. And once the data gets there, it is replicated into this distributed network system. So the data goes into not only one blockchain, it gets replicated into different or many other nodes. What this is making, it's putting trust into the information, because as it gets replicated, it is almost impossible to modify the data. So for things such as goods that, for example, need to have or be in a specific temperature on a track, it is very useful and important to have for certain that the temperature was always between a range. For example, if we are talking about food, food is not going to get spoiled. So that's in a very brief way what geo blockchain means. Is adding the spatial component to the data that is uploaded into the blockchain. Back to you, Loha.
Yeah, some birds actually told to me that you use consensus as a service. Alberto, can you just tell me what is consensus as a service?
Oh, yes.
And maybe later on, you can also refer how it solves actually the problem of scalability and blockchain plots. I know that there are lots of discussions nowadays about blockchain scalability. They are not scalable. I don't know how it solves this problem.
Very brief. Consensus as a service. It really solves the issue that we have with current blockchain about scalability. Because if we think about the data that all the satellites are sending each time, it's terabytes, it's incredible huge. amount of data. So it's impossible to store in a blockchain because it will be loaded very quickly. So now that we are a little bit, the blockchain is increasingly developing and having new architectures, a consensus as a service allows to delegate the consensus or the participant of the whole network, okay, in a parent chain. So in that case, all the consumers that Samsung set up for him, the nodes are the satellites, and for me also the nodes can be the mobile devices, okay? All these devices can participate in the consensus and they can send the messages with something that we call the consensus as a service. So we have several chains where the main chain takes care of the security of the whole network. And then we can have companies or satellites or networks of IoT that they send the transactions, okay, thanks to the bundling process, they goes to the parent chain and they are verified. So it's like a way to scale much better. And in the solution that we were developing with Esri, it matches perfectly for the needs.
So you're kind of saying, okay, if I have my mobile phone, I should not be worried about the storage because there is someone else who takes care of the storage. Yeah,
this is one of the reasons that we don't want to fool your phone with all the storage of the database, but you can also have a full node in an Android phone, thanks to the pruning and the archival and snapshot architecture, where you can remove certain part of the data and only leave on the phone like a proof that the data that was recalled before. So there are many variations for that. Yeah.
So how you think geo-blockchain will evolve in the future? So what kind of use cases geo-blockchain might have in the future?
Well, we have brought a use case. Alberto,
yes.
Sorry, Alberto, you were going to say something.
Oh, no. Go ahead, please. Okay,
so, well, can you go back to the, yes. So with Alberto, with Gelurida, we are using the Ardor blockchain platform to create this prototype. So when we talk about geo-blockchain, I mentioned transportation. In transportation, in here we can see a dashboard that a company that has a fleet of trucks is using, and they are receiving data, live data with the location of the trucks. In the trucks, they have other sensors that are measuring temperature. So this data that we see, its attributes, is sent into a blockchain. In this case, we are using Ardor. This is one node of this distributed network system. So when the data is loaded, it is gathered and it's gathered into like a package, and it is made into a transaction that goes into the blockchain. So every transaction has a set of records. And these records here we can see, can you go back? Sorry, one more. Here we can see all the different transactions that are received by the blockchain. We see a list. Every single transaction is created in this case, every 10, 30 seconds. And it has the location of the fleet of trucks with all the temperature on it. So what is important about the blockchain is that a transaction that is made right now or relies on previous transactions. So it cannot be mutable. It cannot be changed, because for changing one transaction, you need to change all transactions that came in or below. So here in the blockchain, we can see in each transaction in each group or package that is sent in a transaction, a group ID. This group ID is the one that is sent to the blockchain and is translated by an algorithm into a hash. It's a code. We can see it is quite long, this code. This code gets compared into the with what is stored in the blockchain, and that's what certifies that the data is right, is correct. Can you move? So moving from technical and putting it more into a graphic or an example, here we can see another application. In this case, we are not talking about trucks, we are talking about ships. So this is a ship that traveled from Miami to Europe. And along the way, many transactions were sent to the blockchain with the location, the time, and also the temperature. So in the green or white dots, we can see that the temperature was between the right range. But in some areas, the temperature of these goods were out of range, and we can see it in red. So this dashboard is being used by a customer that wants to trace back the location of the ship and also the temperature, and they can see the truth that cannot be changed, that in that section the temperature was actually below what was necessary.
Perfect.
Back to you, Loha. Yes.
Yeah, fascinating. It's I was just thinking about lots of other applications. Hopefully one day we will not have just this one for the trucks,
Okay.
but
yeah, but we can think about the future, about what's going to happen. And for me, one of the most incredible future cases that we will work on in the future, it's to create programmable cash flows. So we have merchants that we are sending shipments. What if it would be possible to pay not when it gets until the end of the travel? It can be paid regularly based on the quality of the shipment, on the measurement. I think this is where we are going to go ahead. And also it's very important to make insurance company to participate. So they can track also the shipments and what's going to happen if there is an accident or whatever, they can pay automatically. So I think this is going to be also the next step in geo-blockchain to combine what we can say business orchestration into real events of IoT.
really, really interesting. Now we will go and ask maybe Samson, because Samson actually talked about lots of business opportunities, and I'm sure that lots of attendees already they are going with some ideas, business ideas. So how can startups and businesses raise capital for their space business? Samson, can you give us some tips?
Yeah. Right now you have you can go to ask a bank, and if you have the millions of dollars, they'll lend you the millions of dollars at 8 to 15% interest. That doesn't actually help you as particularly a startup or a business trying to scale. You can go after venture capital or VC money. They want you to work for them because they'll want 30 to 60% of your company. And then later down the line, you have hedge funds and private equity, but those are traditional ways of raising money. And so when you're looking at space, you really need that patient capital, because it takes the hardest part of anyone's overnight success is the first 10 years. And in space, that is 110% true. Because particularly if you're in the launch sector, you need 10 years of experience just to get your business model right. So that other option that we're looking at, particularly in these digitally native ecosystems, are investment crowdfunding. So here in America, we have a bunch of security exemptions for raising capital through equity or debt. If you've ever seen the show Shark Tank, where people can invest in your business. So we're seeing many startups, particularly in micro launch, nano launch, looking at engaging customers, engaging fans, and raising money for their business. And so two things I'm gonna leave you with is that customers have more money than investors, because Emilio and Andres, they don't pay back their investors, their customers do. So with blockchain technology, with the digitalization of infrastructure, you're able to connect your customers or your consumers or even just your fans with your business through investment crowdfunding. There's a lot of different regulations. We'll have to have a separate seminar about the Securities and Exchange Commission, but just think, oh, we can take the people who are just enthusiasts and customers and connect them with their business model. So that's the first thing you want to think about, is that customers have more money than investors. The next is to think about is, I like to say, every dollar tells a story. And if you tell your story well, dollars will come listen to yours. So when you go to raise money, you got to tell a great story. So of course, this is a shameless promotion to come on the Space Channel so we can help you tell your story, because we want people to know that your business exists, that you are looking for raising funds, and what your value proposition is and how you're going to improve humanity. I know we're up on time, so I'm going to conclude by saying gracias por la oportunidad de hablar con todos ustedes. Espero conocerlos a todos en persona algún día pronto, because I really want to travel. And so that's it for the moment. Very excited to talk to you all today. Oh, you're on mute, Loha.
Oh my God, I was just talking with myself. I was saying, though we are running out of time, we have got some questions from participants.
Oh, okay.
One of them is for you. I have just sent it to you by chat. Maybe you just have, I'm going to read it loud, though maybe you can also review it and then come back and answer it. So I don't know, it's a private message, so he or she says, hello, thank you for the presentation. When Samsung to orbit control, it's like for controlling two slots in orbit for GEO satellites. Is it controlled by ITU, and it is not foreseen to use blockchain as far as I know?
That is true at the moment, but as space develops, I forget, it's S8782, it's called the Space Act here in America. And so recently America created Space Force. We also released the Artemis Accords. And the Artemis Accords is an update on the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. And so we're looking at what is the next iteration of control or space doctrine look like. So there have been some things that have been traditional. America has pivoted a little away from traditional cooperation. I apologize for that, we're working on it. And so, but we're looking at how do we better have, to Alberto's and Esri's demo, how do we have that transparent log, that transparent group text of who owns what and where. We're also looking at in the Artemis Accords, and this is where lawyers, if you got lawyers out there, they're going to play a huge role in this development of space because of policy role. When we get to the moon, we're already looking at Nokia just got a couple $2 billion to set up a 5G network on the moon. You might have heard about this, the Nokia, the cell phone folks. There will also be what is the orbit? Who owns the orbits around the moon? Because already China and Russia are setting up, are planning a base on the dark side of the moon. So I do agree with you that ITU controls how orbits are presently managed, but we have to think about the evolution. If you look at the number of rocket launches and the number of satellites just Amazon and Google are putting up for the 2020s, I think Amazon is about 6,000 satellites. Google is about 3,000 satellites. ITU is going to expand. Who controls those orbits is going to expand. They're going to look for a new way of showcasing to the world in a secure fashion what orbit's at, because this is where the politics come into it. Because at the end of the day, we have to get for space doctrine and national defense, both US, China, Argentina, Colombia, where their secret satellites are at. We have to come to consensus on where those orbits are. And we have to be truthful, because at the end of the day, the biggest hazard to the development of space economy is debris. And if we have one satellite hit another satellite, it creates more kinetic energy opportunities to ruin other people's businesses. So you are correct, but again, put on your time travel hat, fast forward into the future, and space is going to be, blockchain will be the plumbing of space, It won't be sexy. It will just be there.
Indeed. Thank you for the answer, Samson. We've got also a question addressed to Andres in the chat box. Andres, Albert is asking, why do you have to replicate the data in another site? He also says that blockchain is immutable. So what is the point in the replication? The data will be in every node, right? So
yes.
every node in the,
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, it's distributed. Let's not say replicated, because it's only in the blockchain as itself. So, but it's distributed in different nodes. So when we upload the data, it gets into a node, and then it gets distributed into all other nodes. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, but
yes,
I can add to the explanation of Andres that it is uploaded to the blockchain is the hub that proves that the data was stored and it exists. So you can, you are not as the question they asked to Samson about the, for instance, in Europe we have the GDPR, and we are not allowed to upload everything to the blockchain, no personal data, not anything. So the only option that we have is to allow proof of the data. And the main data is stored in a centralized database that we can query through one node of the blockchain using the authentication that the blockchain provides. Okay, just to clarify this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alberto. We're running out of time. We already we're out of time for 11 minutes. So I wanted to thank you all for participating in today's webinar. And I hope to see you again next time, hopefully soon. For the ones who still have got questions, please send it to us by email. We are going to approach the speakers, and we will send the emails of the speakers if you want to talk with them directly. Please, yeah, let us know if you have, if you want us, or if you have any questions still left to be answered. Thank you so much for all the speakers. It was a pleasure to have you all with us. With this, I would like to end the webinar, today's webinar. If you want, I don't know if the speakers, they also want to say the last words. Samson already said the last words. The other ones you have got, I mean, if you want to use the last minutes, you're most welcome to say something. Otherwise, the webinar is finished, and thank you so much for participation.
Thanks to you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all. Nice meeting you.
Same here. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Bye.